promotion. Who doesn't, you know? And it really came with not just more responsibility. I think that would have been fine, especially for the individual I'm describing, but different responsibility. And it's important to recognize sometimes the carrot isn't necessarily the one you want to eat. And I think that's, I wanted to cover that story specifically. I think a lot of people hear these big names and they hear something that sounds attractive, and it's just because you know the brand. And I would challenge you to look a little bit deeper and to think through some of the bigger decisions you're going to make, and not just let that kind of bright light blind you and think, oh man, it's got to be great. It's got promotion right in the name. Is this me too? Mm-hmm. So this is a quote, another cliche quote. Go as far as you can see. When you get there, you'll be able to see farther. And I think this kind of transitions into the next part of our presentation.
Yeah, J.P. Morgan said that, and it basically just means you never really stop expanding your horizons. You think, well, I'm going to be an IT professional, I'm going to do this, web application security testing. You get there and realize that I've just discovered 50 new career opportunities and things in security, IT, or whatever you do that you didn't know existed. There's always some research, something you just won't find out until you get to that next level. And that's kind of what he meant by that quote. And that's what this slide we tried to represent here, the concept of big ideas and small steps. These small steps, they're sometimes tedious and a pain and they're frustrating, but the examples here, somebody or a group of people had very large goals, lofty goals, if you will. Walking on the moon, that's huge. I think people, our ancestors would sit around at night and probably look at the moon, not even knowing what was there, or yet alone if we could walk on it. It wasn't even a dream. It wasn't even a thought. So doing that took a lot of small steps. I mean, we had to develop technology that allowed us to propel a person in a capsule to the moon, walk on it, and get back safely. That's that's huge. And those are a lot of small steps over a long period of time. And Steve Jobs, a young Steve Jobs there, the guy was laser focused. He had a vision really to change technology and the way we used it and interacted with it. He didn't bootstrap. I don't think he wouldn't have even used that term. He was truly innovating by taking small steps and by just coming out with small changes, and some would go forward, some would go backward, but he had that vision, and that's him at a young age. Just look where Apple is now. And,
I think he looks like Jerry Maguire, personally, if you've seen the movie. I actually thought that's who it was, and Jim was like, no, that's Steve Jobs, which I'm blown away by.
That's what Google Images told me. And the pyramids, a really ancient example of literally small steps of a person or people moving these giant pieces of stone to build something magnificent and huge, and something that lasted so long. And the light bulb, somebody would stand out with a kite that had a metal key on it to see how electricity worked, is mind-blowing. And those small steps, look around us, it's just electricity everywhere, and those are visions of people before us, and that's part of who we are, and hopefully, what you guys can start to see in yourselves, like this project you're doing in SRA. It may seem like it means nothing. How do you get a job out of that? And the tasks you're doing are just menial. But trust me, if you keep taking the small steps and going forward and with a goal, even if it's just really vague and broad, or you don't know what it is yet, if you just keep moving forward, great things can happen.
So this is actually, I kind of took where's your secret weapon, or what is your secret weapon, from my IST 331 teacher, and it was kind of his takeaway for the class. Ritter was his last name. I'm not sure if he's still here. He talked about, he is, I see. He talked about what's your secret weapon, and the way he put it was, it really resonated with me. It's kind of, what can you do, and I don't mean like what do you have, or what does your mom think about you, or you're a nice person. What can you do better than other people? And if you can't answer that question, it's really hard for an employer to look at you, or really even just a potential fund to look at you and think, yeah, this person has things that set them apart from the rest of people. You can be the nicest person in the world. If you don't have the technical skills to make the ideas that you have, where are you going to go with that? And I think that's a harsh truth. But I think it's something that most people don't really want to stand up and say, maybe because you're not so arrogant, I'm better than other people at this. But it's an important trait, and it is something that you should be focusing on, whether you're just trying to go out and get a job. One of my most meaningful interviews was just prior to an interview for Air Products, and the human resources person asked me, what makes you better than the other IST students who are interning here this summer? And I was kind of like, wow, I've never had someone be kind of so rude to the other people and stuff. Like I was kind of blown away. I didn't really know how to answer. And I realized that was a question that was going to be in the interview. By the time I got to the interview, I was ready to answer. I learn faster than other people, and I apply it much more quickly than they do. And I got a job offer, So I think that was a key moment for me to realize, yeah, it's not a joke anymore. These are people who are going to pay you a lot of money, and they want you to do something for them. And if you're not ready for that, it's a little unnerving to be sitting in a room describing, well, I'm better than the people around me, but I don't really know why. I can't really tell you. I'm not really practicing anything specific that they aren't. I'm just kind of, I'm good enough, right? So I think that's where this slide came from. Obviously, these are cheesy examples, but I've been watching Star Wars lately, so it came to mind pretty quickly. And that whole comment about your feelings, that's, to those of you who get that, that's where the X-Wing came from, so.
You take Toolbelt?
I could talk a little bit about this one. So I already mentioned, every day you're kind of doing things, and those are all examples of things that you can and can't do. You maybe do them well, you maybe miss a lot of meetings, you maybe always make it early. You can really start to evaluate, are you the type of person that has a grocery list when you go to the grocery store, or do you just walk in? And when you walk out, do you have actually the stuff you need? Which, if you were me in college, you didn't go to the grocery store because I had a meal plan all the way through school. And that says a lot to me. It's a detail I'm not interested in. And I'm interested in details, but at the time, especially not that one. And I think that told me a lot about maybe some of these little things. I'm a much more big picture person, and it didn't appeal to me. So.
And me personally, it's I noticed in IST in my classes, it was I came in with a graphic design background, HTML. I didn't realize that C++ and all these other things, how I would be useful. I would come to class and people would know how to code in C++ and do all these things, and then I started to be like, well, I can build websites. We can make our presentation look really cool. I can make a logo. I can do this, and they're like, I didn't even know that it existed. You definitely should do that. And it took a while. At first, it was very frustrating. I couldn't fit in and couldn't speak up and say I knew how to do these things. So it took a while for those instincts to kick in. And I watched myself accelerate rapidly. Like Dave was saying, it's keep an eye out on those things that you pick up. For example, if you want to learn Python, or you want to learn Ruby, or anything, graphic design, have you stayed up all night doing it just for fun? I've done that before, and I look at the clock and it's 4 in the morning, and it's not even for school. It's just for my own personal pleasure. I like solving that problem and diving in really deep. And that's something, if you can identify in yourself that you're learning rapidly, there's a lot of power behind that, and that's something you can bring to an investor, a future employer, anybody, where you have that passion, because it's not always easy to identify, even though you sometimes don't realize that you stayed up all night doing that. And where do you struggle? Group work, everybody has a certain part of it they struggle with. Some people, Dave likes to make a nice project plan, manage everybody, assign tasks, do these things. I don't really do that. It's kind of just, I'm more of just do the work, and I'd rather be really deep in the work, which is kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing and Dave's doing what he does. And I've recognized that probably later than I should have, but I still did. And, you know, getting into code and development and even graphic design, it's all kind of like, it's not very management oriented. And then I realized, well, I don't have to be a manager. There's lots of jobs out there and lots of opportunities for me to progress and, you know, and prosper really that aren't in management. So I've made a decision that management might not be for me right now. I need to get the technical base and the technical knowledge, and that's where I get lost in the work, if you will. And yeah, accomplishments. Again, it's what have you accomplished that other people haven't, and you should be able to identify those, whether it's in your resume or just in day-to-day life. You know.
I think for that one, it's like sometimes I'll get a compliment from somebody that's like, they're really trying to be nice, and I'm like kind of blown away, like, oh, is that an accomplishment? I didn't, like, I did it so naturally, I didn't realize that that's difficult for other people. And I think that's maybe why Jimmy's like, oh, I could have noticed earlier, but it's just so natural to you that it doesn't you're not necessarily sure. I think a good example is when I started at Redspin. I had a background in change management. I had a background on a compliance team for Agilent, doing regulatory compliance and explaining it to people who were not involved with it, and talking about, well, we're an organization. We have to comply with financial regulation in order to prove that we're not cooking the books. And I did that several times over, and I was applying for jobs, and I didn't even really notice that on my resume. It wasn't something that came to light for me because I didn't know that not everybody takes IST 452. You don't have this law class where people make you write papers on HIPAA, you know, and it's like I had to struggle through some of the things, but then get feedback from someone who does know, Bagby, that this is not how it is. You're close, but no, it's really like this. And that kind of actual knowledge in a field that's very subjective is one of my secret weapons, and I didn't really even know I had it because it was an easy accomplishment for me. So I think paying attention to your accomplishments, and when you get those kind of random compliments, maybe give them second thought.
Yeah. And you know, how can you do that as students, whatever year you are, and how can you make that part of your daily habit, which is something we're not experts in, and I certainly wasn't when I was sitting in SRA 211 or any class for that matter. But the first one is being mindful of your learning. I like the term mindful and mindfulness. It's kind of being present. You're sitting in your group, you're doing your work, you're divvying up the work. What are you learning? What are you saying, and how are you acting, and what are you volunteering for? Just be mindful of that, and you can add that to the tool belt that we talked about, and kind of, okay, well, I always volunteer for the same thing. I always want to be the guy that's up presenting, which I wasn't that guy, or I always want to be the guy that's in the back writing the code. I don't want any to have to do with anything else, and being mindful of that and how you learn is really important. And instead of just coasting by, you start realizing where your strengths and weaknesses are, and employers like that. Even if they're not the most technical things in the world, you don't have to be the best. You guys are going to go and, your first job, if you're good at something, they're going to be happy that you've identified that. And putting yourself outside your comfort zone, I tried to do that in IST. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I was just signing up for random clubs. I was like, I'll be on the board of that. I'll write for the magazine of IST, even though I don't write very well. Or it's like I'm just interested in meeting new people, and it doesn't have to be an IST. It can be play a volleyball game outside of your dorm with people you have never met, and just introduce yourselves, or even at a party or whatever. Putting yourself outside your comfort zone really lets you look introspectively to yourself, and I always give the example of traveling. I've been to a lot of countries, some of which by myself for work, for pleasure, in places I've felt very, very uneasy, and that's as far I went to Sri Lanka by myself. That's as far out of my comfort zone as I've ever been. Guys with guns everywhere, and you're just by yourself. Just you only have your own thoughts. So you learn so much, and you learn it so fast. Like going to Grenada, it only takes a day or two, and you've learned a ton about yourself just living in your own thoughts.
Yeah, and I think Jimmy just talked about two stories that did result because he took advantage of what was in front of him, and through work to go on work trips. Usually that's something you came up with. It's not usually your boss telling you, hey, I want to pay you to go someplace really neat and it's going to be valuable for you. That's something you do for yourself. So Jimmy signed up to go to Grenada. It wasn't like somebody came to him and tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, you should go. So I think that's kind of what that next one means. It's you taking advantage of what's in front of you and keep connecting the dots. That references the sort of learning how to learn the dots before from yourself and from your peers and your mentors. Keep doing that forever. I'm sure some of you get into arguments with your parents because they tell you how it is, and you want to tell them, no. And for me especially, my parents are watching, so they'll probably enjoy this. It's not, once you hit a certain age, you don't just become, oh, well, I don't have to learn anymore, because that's when you're old. And I think that's when you can admit to people, I'm old. I've stopped trying to learn. And for me, I'd never like to get there. And I think my parents thankfully don't want to get there either. But learning how to keep saying, well, it doesn't matter what age I am. It doesn't matter how much I've collected yet. I still need to keep going, and I still need to keep connecting the dots. I still need to keep trying to make these things happen.
So what's an example of a way in SRA that you can learn? This is some really technical wording here. Get elite hacking skills. This is a war game. It's a website you can go to over the wire. One of our coworkers pointed us to this. He thought it'd be a good idea. I don't think we'll have time to do a full demo right now. We're going to maybe do some interactive stuff. But stuff like this is the stuff that he sent the link out, and I ended up staying after work to finish my work because I spent an hour.
Yeah.
2 hours.
I'm not technical, and I played this game for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It essentially starts out, the first page says, the password's somewhere on this page. I'll give you a hint. You have to look at the source code. Once you get that password, you move on to the next level, and it's a little more difficult, more difficult. And it's basically covering, there's a whole bunch of games, but that one specifically would be mostly...
Well, there's a bunch on there, and if you're into networks, or into Linux or C or anything like that.
So yeah, if you want to have a takeaway, this is something definitely to try at home.
Go try stuff. Go to blogs and look for stuff like this, because it is fun, and I didn't know if I thought it was fun when I was younger, but now it's what I do every day. So I really enjoy it, and you should check it out. And since we are a security company and this is a security class, we wanted to talk about the security lens, I guess I'll call it. And there's a lot of talk going on this week about startups and building new web apps and mobile phones and all this great technology that's really improving the world we live in. I fully agree. But I think one of the two of us have asked almost in every single talk, well, how do you secure that? Because that's all we think about now. We're kind of brainwashed. And, so security is a culture, not an afterthought. That's not implemented yet in this world. Unfortunately, development's getting pushed out really fast, really lean, and it's keeping me employed, but I'd also rather my data wasn't floating around the internet. My credit card number, I want you to build security into what you do from day one. The Weebly guys said it, they were mindful of their security from day one, and that's actually rare. I can say that with certainty after doing lots and lots of vulnerability assessments on big name applications. So it's not an afterthought. And again, security-minded development, hire developers that care about it, and if they don't, really don't hire them. It's not an option to not care about security at this point. We see it in the news. We see it every single day. There's something going on about APT. I've heard that word a few times lately, and Chinese hackers and LinkedIn and Facebook. Just be mindful in development and choose the right developers if you are going to go lean and have a startup and build a product. And bad guys want your data. That can't be said enough. They want your password. They want your credit card number. They want your social security number. They want your healthcare information. They are going to go to any length to get it. And it's not an illusion anymore. It's a reality, and I can't believe I'm up here preaching about it because I just see it every day, and I'm using these applications and this technology, and I'm terrified of my own stuff. I've almost given up, and that's not what we want. We want you guys to come out of school with the skills and the tools and the knowledge to say, no, that's not right. You need to develop it this way, or you need to implement this server this way, for the sake of everybody using that piece of technology. And hire Redspin, and we'll come and do some tests on your technology. So we're that second set of eyes. Just kidding, you don't have to hire us. And I don't know if this dates us or anything, but this is from Office Space. And do you guys have any questions?
Thanks for having us. Okay.
One, being in the security industry, what do you see as upcoming trends, and what should we start learning about?
The question was, what do you see being in the security industry as far as trends? I think you could probably talk about that better.
So, there's two schools of thought. I think secure web development is probably a good skill to have right now. If it's not enough to be just a developer. If you can code things securely, and if you are able to assess risk of applications, or just of big data sets. We go and check out banks and hospitals, and you need to be able to say, well, what does that record mean? What does that mean to you? What's the financial impact? And being able to extract those answers, both technical and not technical. But yeah, I guess.
I think for me, I actually was just talking with Madhavi about this. I think that risk assessments and risk analysis is something that's becoming required of so many hospitals, obviously, to work with payment cards, obviously. Financial regulation there. It's not going away. There's not going to come a point where people say, well, you just don't need to assess your risk anymore when it comes to IT. And I think that for you guys, there's a very big opportunity that you can learn about specifically current security settings and get yourself into a place where even if you're coming out of college versus someone who has a lot of experience, you know the technology better than they do, so you can kind of wow the people a little bit better and give them better recommendations. A lot of people can point out you have risk here. The real value in what we do is giving recommendations that are realistic. Here's your short-term, medium, and long-term goals. And if you implement these things, you'll be in a much better place. And if they're creative and they're cheap, then they'll usually do them, and they'll usually call you back to do that again in the future because they're going to change their infrastructure. They're going to have new employees. They're going to need new challenges to be solved. So I think if I were in school, I would focus, particularly being me, I like policy, I like law. I think that's an excellent opportunity for all of you in the room. I think it's an industry that's exploding, and the Big Four want to be involved with it, but they don't have people who are health information technology experts. So I think that's a very real opportunity for all of you.
And on the technical side, just in specific, I would just spin up as many virtual machines as you possibly can and learn how to deploy an Apache server, or just use Linux. Don't have to use it as your primary operating system. Just try it, and even if you go to your employer and say, I have virtual machines with a few Linux instances, and I learned how to deploy Apache. I wish I would have done much more of that, because you'll need it depending on what you do, but it doesn't even matter. You need to at least know how to talk the talk.
Another question, how important do you think it is to educate other countries on how to operate and understand technology? And Jimmy, would you consider this a passion?
Yeah. The second question was, do I consider it a passion of mine? The first one was, how do we let other countries know?
How important is it to
How-
educate other countries and understand technology?
I think that first one, how important is it to educate other countries? I think that's a challenge that's being decided at the highest levels of government right now. I don't think there's a good answer to that. I think we've seen some presentations talking about cyber warfare and talking about the upcoming the presenter actually used the term Cold War, and I think that's that's an ongoing thing. There's a lot at stake in industry, in government, in personal information, in banking. So other countries, I think we'll probably do what we've done in the past. We'll try to make some kind of organizations across the world and get people to sign up and give them incentives if they follow the rules. So
yeah, it's either that or we're just going to tell them what to do. I think we're going to see a bit more offensive and defensive strategies than a peaceful treaty of information security, because it's a cultural thing. It's not really a, oh, well, like other countries don't think stealing a credit card is a big deal, and we do. So it's not like we can go and say, you can't do that. So it will be us beefing up our defense, our country, and performing offensive countermeasures. It's already happening, so. And it is a passion of mine, one of many.
We got one up here, actually.
Okay, sorry.
In your presentation, you said that security should be a culture, not an afterthought. The majority of us in this room, we believe that. But how do we, as individuals, get that across to other people so that we can create a culture of security?
So this is actually something I deal with a lot in hospitals. You have people who they want to help. That's why they work in a hospital. They like helping other people, and it's something that's too easy to take advantage of, to basically say, can you help me get on this computer? I'm an IT guy. I need to fix that. That's actually one of the examples I've read recently. And it's very hard for someone who their whole life has gone out of their way to help somebody to just realize, oh, this is actually a security issue. No, I can't help you. So I think at this point, it's training, and it's follow through. It's managers asking people around, hey, keep your head up. If you see somebody you've never seen before in the hospital, say hello. Don't just let them walk right by you. So I think right now, instilling a culture is a lot of good process, knowing that even if people don't follow the process all the way, we have some technical safeguards backing that up, and then really teaching people, if you want to help, if that's why you work here, then keep security in mind, because if you lose somebody's personal data and it's very private and it ruins their career, you didn't help them out very much. So I think that kind of letting them experience the extra mile helps a lot of people realize, like, I do want to be security minded. I don't want to be the one who ruins this for so many people and puts them in a position where they now have to prove that, no, I didn't fly to the Cayman Islands and deposit all of my money into a bank account that I can't see anymore. So
I just use scare tactics usually. No, I mean, it kind of works. The more people that get breached and the more that it's in the news, and the more your employees know about stuff that's going on, like their stuff, they've had to change a password now for maybe their LinkedIn account. Like, that's a big deal. And that's changed a lot, and it's just ramping up so fast. There's more and more and more, and the more it gets in the main, media and the news, I think people will hopefully become more aware. But you have to also kind of be that guy in the office and be like, I don't want you to get hacked, so you're doing something wrong.
I can say one thing we do in our office. I was luckily warned by Jimmy before it happened to me. If you don't lock your computer,
you get huffed.
yeah, you'll come back and find some fun stuff on your screen. So
we always change the background to a picture of David Hasselhoff, and that's just for fun. But it's also like, lock your computer. You're in a room full of hackers. Like, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about starting your own businesses?
I've thought about it. My brilliant idea, I'm not afraid to share it, I call pants puller uppers. I go camping all the time. I've considered sleeping in a bivvy, which is essentially a just waterproof bag. When you're sleeping in it, you stake it to the ground, and then in the morning it's freezing and you don't want to get out of your sleeping bag because you're cold. But if you've ever slept in a mummy bag, you try to reach down to your legs and the bag bends and you can't actually reach your legs and they're all tired and you start to get all these cramps in your legs. So I just basically want to create a string that you put it onto here, you pull it up, and it's brilliant to me, but I haven't really done anything with that. So
for me, I do own a business with my girlfriend Lindsay. We roast coffee, which is basically the opposite of what I do at work every day. It's like it's kind of a, I like doing stuff with my hands, but it's not really like a startup like everyone's been talking about here. It's more like we just do it for fun and it turned into a business. I don't think I'm ready to start